What got you into CrossFit? Because it's always interesting what gets somebody into CrossFit, whether it's something that they heard about. And we had Matt Frazier on the podcast. He kind of had an interesting route, like kind of on his way to CrossFit. It was something that he'd never even really knew anything about before. But once he started doing it, he got obsessed with it. And I know your journey is particularly interesting because I know you especially appeal to a lot of people today that have spent years doing CrossFit, but were looking for something different afterwards.
True. Yeah. You could kind of imagine like I'm a 20-year-old, 21-year-old kind of wrapping up college, and I'm just like thirsty for anything fitness related. And it just so happened that was in 2006. So 2006, 2007, 2008 was a very early time in CrossFit. It was on the web, but it didn't really start to get mainstream until I would say 2009, 2010. And 2008 was when the first CrossFit gyms were starting to really pop up around the world, or mostly around the country, and predominantly in California, because this is where things started, in Santa Cruz. So I was sort of consuming anything fitness related, and a friend who I train with on a regular basis in another group fitness class, she said, hey, I'm taking this class over here. You should come try out this CrossFit class. So I just jumped at the opportunity, and it just so happens, and kind of fate led me into this group class that was taught by a very influential person in the CrossFit that came out of the CrossFit world, Kelly Starrett, who he and his wife built this incredible company that was formerly called Mobility WOD, but he's really just been an instrumental figure in reshaping physical therapy thoughts and practices and mobility practices. He was my first coach, and I took his class, and I was deeply inspired by him, but also the workout itself. You know, we did deadlifts and sprints, and I don't have the story of like, I went and did my first workout and got so debilitatingly crushed that I was like, I thought I was unfit. I went and I did pretty good, and I was like, but this is super fun, and it combines a lot of the things that I love. So I just started to consume as much as I possibly could. But my first CrossFit class happened. I dedicated about 3 months to really diving into it. But then I matriculated into medical school, and I actually started my medical school coursework in Central Ohio. And it was sort of like, well, CrossFit's going to have to sort of take a back seat right now, because there wasn't a CrossFit gym. There wasn't a place for me to really go practice it. I was dabbling in it at like the school gym, but it was not the same. And so I kind of think back on that as like, I got into it, but then I had to press pause for more or less a year on CrossFit until I ended up leaving medical school, taking a leave of absence, in which case I kind of rekindled my fire for CrossFit.
And if you could elaborate on that, because I kind of have a similar experience. There was a time in a past life, I was pre-med, took the MCAT, got into med school. I decided ultimately it was not for me, and and the rest is history. And ended up, at the time was probably one of the most controversial decisions amongst the people in my life. Today, looking back in hindsight, it was probably the best decision. But what influenced you to essentially not go down the full path of med school?
Yeah, I imagine there's probably a lot of similarities. I came from a family of doctors and people in healthcare. And so because of my interests, because of my, academic interests, it just was like, oh, this seems like a good fit. And I wanted to figure out how to be involved in healthcare in some way. And so that felt like, okay, this could be a place to go. But there was no specialty. I was like, oh, I can't wait to go be a surgeon, or I can't wait to be a radiologist. It was, I want to go learn the medical system and then iterate on that with like movement, nutrition, training. But I think that at the time, being in medical school, Peter Attia in his most recent book, or his book, kind of outlines this pretty well. He says like medicine 2.0 was in its like heyday back at that point. And it still is to a certain degree, but it's like the idea that we're going to learn how to assess when people are broken, and then we're going to prescribe a fix. And that fix is a pharmaceutical. It's some intervention that's going to fix, and I'm putting quotes around that because it's like, we're going to just mitigate symptoms. We're not going to go to the root cause of why you are sick in the first place. And I knew that was a fundamental problem, but I also then was in the system, and I was like, whoa, this is all we're learning. This is all we're getting taught. And to learn that system, Medicine 2.0, is a massive, massive undertaking. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to dedicate 8 years of my life because I'm going to excel and I'm not going to allow myself to not be the best. But I have to dedicate to learning a system that I fundamentally think is broken in a way. And we don't have to go down the like why I see value in Medicine 2.0, because there's plenty of value in it. However, that wasn't how I wanted to be as a professional, and wasn't what I was passionate about. So it was controversial amongst my inner circle, the people that were closest to me at the time. It felt like it was the biggest decision I was making. It was fear driven. I was scared. I didn't know where I was going to go after that. Life was crumbling in front of me, the darkest moments of my life. But in hindsight, yes, it was the best decision for me, because I then took all of my skills and passion and channeled it in the health and fitness world to ultimately, help people in a different way understand what they can take control of now, today, to not only prevent chronic illness, but in some cases reverse chronic illness and or just live more fulfilled lives. And I think it's so relevant today, and it continues to be so relevant and more relevant, where people are learning, like, I want to not only just live longer, but I want to live more fully. And so what if I'm taking these pills to sort of correct the dysfunction that's showing up on my labs? It's not making me feel like I'm kicking ass in life. Yeah, it ended up being such a great move for me. But I didn't pivot away from healthcare. I just found a different avenue that I think ultimately suited me best.